Hello, heathens! I'm Megan Angus, and this is Spinning the Wheel podcast. In this weekly audio ritual, we explore the 8 seasons of the witch's wheel of the year, and we discover how it is so much more than 8 Sabbats. We weirding witches time travel through holy days, festivals, and celestial events connecting our celebrations and magic to the past, present, and future. Our cackling fills the night as we take our turn gathering the wool, wielding the distaff, and spinning the wheel. Welcome back, witches. First off, I want to start by sending peace and protection and power to all of the people in Palestine caught up in this incredibly senseless war. I'm sending peace and protection and power to all of the innocent people in Israel who are caught up in this incredibly senseless war, and sending peace and protection to power. Sending peace and protection and power to all people who are victims of imperialism and fascism around the planet. You knew we were going to start off, right? I want to address that I haven't been around for a week or two, and I have been fully in Stunlock as we are watching genocide. We are watching ethnic cleansing in real time. And it's a very difficult time to be a person on the planet right now. Just a tremendous amount of violence and pressure and fear being radiated by nearly all, maybe really all, of the great power structures on our planet right now. And this is because these systems are dying, and they know it. And they are going to do anything and everything, the worst of things, to maintain those outdated power structures, those outmoded systems of oppression and violence. This is what it is to watch dinosaurs die. And we already know that many of these people are of a generation that are willing to take everybody out with them. But it isn't even really a generational thing. It isn't a regional thing. It isn't a religious thing. It isn't a gender thing. It isn't a race thing. It's fascism, pure and simple. And we have to call this stuff out. If you are protesting, please be safe. Bring water, bring masks, dress in plain clothing, turn your phone off. Better yet, leave it at home. Keep your face covered. Keep your tattoos covered. If you dye your hair, cover that. And take care of each other. Check in on your Islamic friends, co-workers, neighbors, community members. Check in on your Jewish friends and lovers and co-workers and community members. This is affecting people all over the planet. And while I'm going to encourage you to do something with what is happening that may feel paradoxical, but this is magic, right? We hold paradox all the time. I don't want you to doom scroll. I don't want you to flagellate yourself with the horrors of what is happening. But I also am deeply encouraging you to not look away. Do not look away. And that's a very fine line to walk. I know it's terrible. I know it's terrible. It's more terrible for the people who are living it. So, with all of that said, let us get into this week's podcast. I have to admit, this kind of work feels very trite to me right now in the face of these massive events. And I also know that this is work that helps people. That is a type of lantern in the dark. And so there's paradox that I get to hold. Okay. Let's get into the preamble, and then let's get into the stuff. Again, sending peace and protection and power to all people who are oppressed by fascism and imperialism around the planet. Okay. We are still traveling through the last days and hours of Mabon season, fall equinox season. That was our last Sabbath. If you have not watched that class, it is available on YouTube. It is available in audio and video on Spotify, and audio on just about all the other podcast platforms. And our next class is coming up. Our next Sabbath is Samhain, the third harvest, which is New Year, also known as Blood Harvest. And this is the true gateway or threshold into the underworld journey. I'm sure it's just a coincidence, right? That class, that next class is going to be for Samhain, I guess I should say. See, I'm a little out of it, guys. I'm a little out of it. Is going to be on YouTube, free to the public, thanks to the incredible and honestly kind of freakish support of my patrons. Thanks, you total weirdos. This class is free to the public. It will be October 25th, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you have a Google or YouTube account, you can heckle me in chat. And please join us for that. We will discuss all of the stuff that we do, all the things. We're going to get into it. So that's coming up October 25th. We have another tarot circle coming up this month, and I will be honest, I've been a little distracted. So I don't know what we're going to talk about for tarot circle this month. And I'm also not entirely certain when it's going to be. It will be before Samhain. It will be before the 31st, maybe the 30th. It's going to be a surprise for everybody, including me. Okay. Is that everything? That's all the stuff. There's more things coming up. Okay, that's it. Sorry. Like I said, I'm a little off my game right now. And I hope you can bear with me with that. And maybe some of you are feeling that too. Okay. This is officially Mabon season, waxing moon in Capricorn, lunar week 29 by some lunar calendars. And truthfully, this week we are kind of, again, standing on a threshold between Libra and Scorpio. The sun is going to move into Scorpio in the next couple of days. We're going to talk about that within the scope of this podcast. For me, this is kind of the unofficial, official pre-funk to Samhain is when the sun steps into Scorpio. And so in a very real way, like whatever our Mabon work is that we needed to attend to, these are kind of the final days and hours of doing that stuff. Okay. So, how's this eclipse window working for everybody? Yeah. Okay. We don't need the astrology to understand that shit is wild on planet Earth right now. We can look at astrology as, wow, isn't it amazing how Earth events are reflected in these patterns and cycles that we see in the sky. In our last podcast that I put out, we were talking about the waning moon in Cancer, and everything that we were focusing on in that waning moon in Cancer was sorrow around family homelands, like what needs to be let go of before we can move forward. I mean, yikes, right? It's on top of it. And then we have our new moon slash eclipse in Libra last week. And Libra ruled by Venus. Some of the most difficult stuff that we can do as we move through Libra is work on diplomacy. And there can be a deep urge to just make everything as nice as possible as soon as possible and not actually get to the root of what is the problem, what is the disturbance. Venus wants no conflict. And it will avoid conflict as much as possible. Obviously, we have plenty of real world, physical world conflict, but this is born out of people refusing to talk to each other. This is born out of people refusing to listen to each other. And we're not doing a both sides thing here. As a side note, I hope that's very obvious. I'm just saying that, there's stuff going on, and folks are absolutely not coming to the table. So here we are, right? Eclipse in Libra on a new moon. So now, here we are a week later. And the moon that we are starting off this week with is a waxing moon in Capricorn at 28 degrees. This is at 8:29 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, later in the day / the next day for everybody else around the planet. And this moon is conjunct Pluto at 27 degrees of Capricorn. It's square Mercury at 29 degrees of Libra. It's square the nodes at 24 degrees of Aries and Libra. It's like, what the fuck, And yet, to me, these celestial bodies are moving in this pattern to help illustrate to us what is happening here on Earth. What are we doing with a waxing moon in Capricorn? Well, first off, it's the waxing half. It's friction. Decisions need to be made. When we're talking about the waxing half moon, it's what's getting bigger, what's getting out of control, what's increasing, and that's causing problems. Again, I don't want to harp on it, but it's very difficult for me not to relate these things. Capricorn, our heritage, our legacy, right? The sign in opposition to Cancer. I don't care about family. I don't care about family ties or family connections. All I want is to secure my legacy, secure my reputation for building empires. What's increasing around that legacy? What's increasing around that work, around heritage that's making things difficult? What difficult changes need to be made to build something of lasting value for the people? This is our waxing moon in Capricorn. It's conjunct Pluto, the great transmogrifier, but creator destroyer, right? Pluto talks to us or represents a process that's about dying before rebirth, about killing off the old thing, destroying and composting the old thing before the new thing and the medicine of the new thing can be revealed. This moon conjunct Pluto is square Mercury in Libra. We're not going to have good conversations around diplomacy, not even trying. Squaring the nodes. This is destined. God said, I'm supposed to have this. This is my destiny. This was decreed by the gods that it had to be this way or it could never be this way. And we know that there has been an ongoing conversation in the world of astrology around this situation between Pluto and the nodes. This has been happening for some time now. And when I look at charts and I focus on that situation, that conversation that's happening in the sky between Pluto and the nodes, I see a triangle, and it makes me think about politics. Yeah, we're going there again. I think about the triangulation that imperialist countries engage in, where they use another country as a mask to press their will, their political agenda into a region. I don't know, say, for example, America and the Ukraine and Russia, right? America's not going to go to war with Russia. Ukraine's going to go to war with Russia. And we are going to back fascist forces in the Ukraine in the argument of we have to stop Russia, evil, evil Russia. Israel is our footstep. That's our threshold, our footing that we have in the Middle East. America isn't going to go to war with Saudi Arabia or any of these other massive powers that are in the Middle East. Palestine is the problem. And Israel is the solution. And in the meantime, lots and lots and lots of people who do not have any say in these conversations are killed or have their lives permanently altered. Pluto. Plutocracy. So this moon is illuminating sharply this conversation. America is having its Pluto return. That's still happening. And here is another piece of that long story. How can we work with this waxing moon in Capricorn? Well, we can think about those big things. We can also think about the small things, the smaller things in our lives. And we can ask ourselves, in the meantime, what friction, what difficulties, what things are getting bigger, what things are getting out of hand in terms of where I'm trying to build something in the world, where I'm trying to create something in the world. Where do I need to rein it in a little bit? Or where do I need to make more room for this thing that's getting bigger? Very, very neutral interpretation there for you as an individual person, right? Because in the midst of all of this, we still are required to live our lives, right? We got to go to work, feed the dog or cat or lizard, right? We've still got to take showers and go to the grocery store and do all the normal stuff in the midst of. So, moving into the lunar body work and the plant work. For our lunar body work, when we have a waxing moon in Capricorn, we are awakening, activating, adorning, and stimulating and preparing for action our bones, our hair, our nails, our teeth, the skeleton of ourself. And for our plant body, before I say that, I have to say the thing I say every week, which is I am not a doctor of the human corpus. I am a doctor of time and gravity and space and a bunch of other really boring stuff that's a super hassle. Not a doctor. Go check in with your trusted health advisor if you're wanting to integrate any of this information on a literal physical level. Always can work with the metaphor. Check your architecture, check your skeleton, check the structures that you are hanging your dreams upon. NBD. And for our plant body work, we are maintaining containers. We're maintaining borders, fences. We're looking at our gardening beds. We're looking at the structures that are necessary to contain and support our garden, and we're doing any work or upgrading or adding to that stuff as is necessary. If we are planting anything at this time of year, we're planting and attending to our roots and our tubers. This is another great moon for harvesting seeds and specifically harvesting roots for replanting. Great time for fertilizing. And then other stuff that we might be doing now, planting annuals that yield above ground crops, especially our viney crops. We are still in the Celtic tree month of vine. So very appropriate here. Peas, beans, melons, squash, tomatoes, peppers are cereals, sure, grains, hay, garlic, cucumbers. This is a great time for taking cuttings, for doing grafting, and harvesting anything that has grown above ground for drying and for storage. Okay. So what do we have going on in the astrology of this day? Just a little bit of stuff. Some of this most of this we've already talked about. Almost all of it we've already talked about. Sun in Libra, square Pluto in Capricorn at 27 degrees. If that isn't obvious already. Moon square Libra, Sun square Libra, or Moon square Pluto, sorry, Sun square Pluto, or Moon conjunct Pluto. Sorry. I do know what I'm doing. I am a professional. Maybe just not today. Sun in Libra, square Pluto, implied by the Sun Moon square of the waxing half. Venus in Virgo, trine Jupiter retrograde in Taurus at 12 degrees. We did not talk about this. And this may be a nice moment of sweetness, reprieve, some good news. You find out that you've got extra money in the bank that you didn't realize you had, something along those lines. Venus, trine, Jupiter are kind of the two benevolents getting together and trying to bring you a piece of candy today on some sub level of sweetness or goodness. Also, sometimes, especially with Jupiter retrograde, it's just less bad. And so sometimes it's a, woo, I dodged a bullet, thanks guys, kind of a moment. And then also we have Mercury entering 0 degrees of Scorpio today. So Mercury officially enters the sign of Scorpio today. Mercury, our planet that speaks to our thinking, our communication, our data acquisition, how we speak, how we teach, how we learn, how we listen. And Mercury entering Scorpio. So on the surface of that, our minds and our conversations may be becoming very scorpionic. And Scorpio has funky stuff and amazing stuff, just like all the signs do. Scorpio is all about revenge. Scorpio is all about secrecy and sometimes being super weird about stuff. Scorpio is also about transformative experiences that go down to the root of the poison and heal from the bottom up. Scorpio is about extreme experiences that ultimately bring us to a new place. And Scorpio speaks to shared resources. And so again, looking at world events, it's like, wow. I'm thinking about a video that I saw today of IDF forces pouring concrete into Palestinian wells to poison and ultimately destroy water sources for folks. But that's just one example, right? It's not just Palestine. It's not just Israel. It's Flint, Michigan. It's everywhere, right? So Mercury entering Scorpio ultimately might be making everything a little bit more spooky. And there is an opportunity for our data and our conversations and our thinking to align with some of that dark stuff that Scorpio brings to the surface. Things like revenge, like secrecy, violence. It also has the capacity within it, just as much of a capacity within it, to bring to the surface conversations around, let's get to the root of the problem. How do we stop this thing and begin to heal? How do we turn shit into compost? How do we turn poison into medicine? That type of stuff. Okay. And then later in the day, the moon will enter Aquarius. Not going to go too hard on our other stuff this week. There are some specific holy days that I do want to talk about, but let us step into the holy days of this. We're going to go back and forth like we did in the old days. And today we also have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Izar. This is found in the constellation Boötes, who is the herdsman, the hunter. Boötes is often looked at as a protector, the plowman. And the name Izar is derived from the Arabic for veil, and this star is found at the waist of the plowman, Boötes, or the huntsman. Um, and the meaning of the star goes back way, way far. But it is an incredibly holy star for a variety of groups of people in Africa, a variety of groups of people in South America. Many of those groups believe that this is a star that their ancestors came from. Um, and and the thing that kind of sticks out to me here is that the name is for veil, but specifically the name connects to the idea of a girdle. We think of it being at the waist, right? Think about how many other stars we have moved through in this portion of the year, whether it was in Virgo or in Libra, that were connected to the waist of Virgo, ultimately. And that idea of the girdle being sort of this object of power. Um, I think that this is connecting to some of those archetypal ideas. But moreover, Boötes and this word Izar, specifically this star, Izar connects us to words like czar or shah. And so protectors, father figures, leaders that guide and protect their people, that kind of stuff. That is the heliacal rising, or that is the star that is rising with the sun as we step into this week. Okay. Moving into the holy days of this, the other holy days, we have from our Greek friends and ancestors, Prorosia, which is connected to the great harvest festivals that are happening at this time of year, and also the Eleusinian mysteries that we talked about last week and the week before. The Prorosia is the things to be done before plowing. That's all we know about this festival. That's all we know about the word. From our friends and ancestors in the Caribbean, this is also the day of the Feast of Black Christ, or Cristo Portobello. So eat a portobello mushroom, but also this is a Black Christ, very much in the lineage of or connected to our Black Madonnas, our Black Virgin Marys that we have out there. So connecting back to some of those deep, deep, deep ancestral roots and deep, deep iterations of those deities and all the stuff that connects to. As we talked about previously, especially in August, but also in September, we see a lot of Black Madonnas. And to me, it's a very interesting thing. There are veneration days dedicated to Black Madonnas throughout the year, but there is just a tremendous cluster of them in August and September. And this is the moment, right? This is the moment that we have our Hermetic energies and Crom Dub, the dark bent one, the dark crooked one, who comes to help us, kind of witness, like, oh yeah, the sun is starting its descent. That's happening. Maybe this archetype is connected to that work too. I don't know that for sure, but it makes me think about that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay. Let us move into October 22nd. Okay. Moving into October 22nd, we have Mercury in Scorpio trine Saturn retrograde in Pisces at 0 degrees. Now, I know a lot of folks have been focusing very intensely on that 29th degree of signs, the anaretic degree, with good cause. But I also think that the 0 degree of any sign is also a very interesting and potentially intense place. And I get this thinking from Vedic astrology. So put an asterisk next to that. But in when we find planets at 0 degree of a sign, sometimes those planets kind of like don't have a sense of who they are or what they need to be doing while they're traveling through that sign. They hit 1 degree of the sign and they're like, I know who I am and I know what's going on. I'll take it from here. But while they're hanging out in that 0 degree moment, they sometimes are kind of like, what am I doing? Where am I? Who am I? What's this for? And as it has been described to me, planets at 0 degrees can be very influenced by other stuff. And so we have Mercury and Saturn both at 0 degrees. And we know that there's other conversations happening in the sky right now. And so, Mercury's in other conversations and influenced by those planets. And Saturn is also in some other conversations and influenced by those planets. In fact, let me pull up a chart and look at that specifically as I'm talking about it, because now I'm curious. We already talked about on the day before, we've got Pluto, Mercury square Pluto. We know that's not done yet, right? Just a day later. Mercury is all hugged up with the sun, the south node in Libra. Mars is here in Scorpio as well. The planet of war, the planet of aggression. And so we could say that Mercury, our planet of data, learning, teaching, conversation, communication, thinking, very influenced by these characters, the sun, the south node in Libra, Mars in Scorpio. Saturn, on the other hand, and as well, I can also say about Mercury, square to the moon, square to Pluto, in opposition to the north node in Aries. And then Saturn is in trine to all of that stuff that is hanging out with Mercury. So a way that we could interpret that is that both of these planets are kind of under the influence of these other planets that are hanging out in the conversation, like Mars, like Pluto. Again, it's easy to see things through this particular lens. So big caveats here, right? But Saturn is our angry grandpa, as we love to call that planet here on the podcast. The big no, right? But at the root of what Saturn is trying to do is Saturn is trying to keep us safe. Safety-minded Saturn. That's Saturn's job, keep us safe. But Saturn will keep us safe utilizing some pretty shitty methods if he has to, or if it has to. It totally doesn't care. It's more than fine. Saturn will lie to you. Saturn will shut down a conversation. Saturn will only bring you bad news to convince you that a certain way of looking at the world or a certain way of thinking is the safest route. It's the most sensible route. Just stick with that. Saturn also wants to stick with what we did in the past, the tried and true, the traditional, the things that seem to have been set in stone. And so we could, again, I know it's going to be the whole podcast, so just bear with me. We could see a lot of our communication, a lot of our media dedicated towards a very traditional outlook on the variety of events that are happening around the planet, and not encouraging, not leaving space for progressive ideas, progressive messages, movements that are forward thinking or future oriented, but instead having lots of media and news outlets very dedicated to the past, to the systemic, the institutional, the bureaucratic, all things that are connected to Saturn. In a neutral world, in a vacuum, Saturn and Mercury in a trine can actually be very, very helpful in our day-to-day stuff that we're trying to get done. It's like, let's have some structure to the thinking. I'm bringing in knowledge. I'm educating myself. I am deciding I need more information about this. And Saturn is like, all right, let's be practical about this. Let's be organized about it. Let's start at the front and work our way to the back. All of that. So very, very helpful. And Saturn, again, is very, very safety minded, but also Saturn wants what's best for us. Saturn represents those parts of us that are like, I've got to learn how to parent myself so that I can do big things and do good things in the world. And so our thinking may be much more optimistic on this day from a very practical or pragmatic standpoint of, information was difficult to take in before. I'm feeling better about taking in information now. Or I feel like I can do something with the information that I have rather than just swimming around in a bunch of data. That kind of stuff, which is awesome. That's very, very helpful. Um, when we've got all this Plutonian energy drifting around in the background, Plutonian energy, yeah. Um, our thinking can get really intense. It can get really obsessive. We can be very argumentative. It can be too intense. So just recognize what's going on for you with your thinking. As I said at the beginning of the podcast, I simultaneously am asking you, don't doom scroll. Do not flog yourself with the horrors of what is happening around the planet, but don't turn away either. Perhaps this Mercury trine Saturn can assist us in some way on how do we walk that tightrope? How do I take in information in a safe way? How do I take in information in an organized way? Maybe that's a way we can work with the astrology. Okay. For our holy days for Sunday, October 27th, from October 22nd, through the 29th, we have Ace Week. This is a global awareness week for our ace or asexual lovers. I know, right? But still, not aromantic, asexual. Our ace lovers, friends, confidants, coworkers, friends, relatives, community members. Asexual folks often do not have a sexual attraction for people. They may have a romantic attraction. They certainly can have emotional connection, but they often do not have a sexual drive toward another individual. So this is just a week of awareness around that. From our Greek friends and ancestors, we have the Pyanepsia and the Oskophoria. This is another festival that sort of is connected to the Eleusinian mysteries, but probably actually goes back as far as the Mycenaean times. It is somehow connected to Apollo and Theseus. There's gourds, there's wine, there's oil, there's getting drunk, there's eating figs, and that's about all the information that we have. From our Roman friends and ancestors on October 27th, we have the Mundus Patet number 3. This is the last. And this is a 3-part festival that takes place over a few months throughout the year, really, I guess is the better way to say that, where this great concave pit is opened up, and it truly is kind of like opening the lid on the underworld, and these offerings are dumped in that are going to compost and eventually be pulled back out in late winter and handed out to farmers to scatter in their fields as fertilizer. So magically connecting the old energy of this year to the new energy of next year's growing cycle. And last but not least, October 22nd, the great witch Aidan Kelly, born in 1940. Big thanks to Aidan Kelly because he basically gave us the modern Wheel of the Year. He is pretty much the witch that kind of put this together and caught a lot of flack for it too, because a lot of people were like, that's not right. And he was like, no, but it's okay. Sorry. All right, moving on to October 23rd. And our astrology for October 23rd is relatively chill. It's just the sun moving into Scorpio. I'm sure it's going to be fine. Everybody calm down. Uh, or it isn't, right? What are you going to do? So now, with the sun stepping into Scorpio, we have the sun in Scorpio. We have Mercury in Scorpio, and we have Mars in Scorpio. And that's a lot. That's a lot of energy in Scorpio during a time period where there's some wild shit happening on Earth. So batten down the hatches, keep it cool, keep it cute. What is a remedy for the gnarliness that can come up during these types of astro transits? Community, connecting with your people. I know. The great hermit over here that's like, nah, I'm good. I don't have to talk to anybody for a week. It's fine. Check in with your people. Check in with them in the sense of like, I'm not doing good. Can we hang out? Can we go watch movies on the couch? Can we just be silent at the park? All of that stuff. But yeah, it's heavy duty, right? And again, as we said, there's gnarly parts to Scorpio: revenge, violence, secrecy, sexual gnarliness can happen here. But that can happen anywhere. Again, we don't need astrology to recognize that there's bad shit in the world. And also, Scorpio can represent really incredible healing opportunities too, and places where community comes together to share resources, to steward resources. Potent stuff. Okay. Holy days for October 23rd. Here in America, the Swallows are leaving Capistrano. They travel approximately 6,000 miles to Goya, Argentina. And then they will return in spring. From our Egyptian friends and ancestors, we have a procession for Bast or Bastet, the cat-headed goddess. From our Hindu friends and ancestors, we have the festival of Dussehra, which marks the end of Navratri, which is a massive festival that takes place here at this time of year. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. From our Chinese friends and ancestors, we have the Chongyang Festival, and this is the 9 of 9 ancestors, or double ninth festival. So it is celebrated on the 9th day of the 9th lunar month. It's a public festival, but the whole point of this is it's directly related to the philosophical concepts of yin and yang, two interconnected aspects that symbolize light and dark. Hello. Also, a day for visiting ancestral graves, paying their respects to the deceased, cleaning graves, leaving offerings, burning incense, etc., etc., etc. And then from our Greek friends and ancestors, we have Thesia following yesterday's Pyanipsia and Oskophoria. And this is celebrating the alleged return of the bones of Theseus to Athens from their original burial place on the island of Skyros. Did that really happen? Who knows? But that's what the history books tell us. All right. Moving on to... Oh, there's one other thing I wanted to say about Monday the 23rd. Venus is at its greatest western elongation, and it is a beautiful morning star all week this week. So if you are inclined to get up early and hang out with Venus for a while, beautiful, beautiful morning star for all of us to enjoy. All right. Moving on to October 24th. Our astrology for this day. The sun in Scorpio trine Saturn retrograde Pisces 0 degrees. So we just had Mercury hanging out and having a conversation with this Saturn. And now the sun is cruising by a couple days later at the same degree, also having a conversation with this Saturn. And this trine could be very stabilizing. If you have been super duper disassociated, I don't blame you. This could be a day where you feel like you are coming back to your body, where you are coming back to the physical world, and you're willing to do that. You're like, yes, okay, fine. I guess I will. Yes, I'll return. Again, we may see this unfold in world events in terms of a stabilizing after these terrible events that have been taking place. Maybe there's a slowing down, maybe there's a cooling, maybe wiser heads, more sober heads will prevail, calling on the greatest aspects of Saturn. Um, Maybe it will lend some patience. But for us here in the individual world, this is another fantastic day for stabilizing systems, organizing stuff, uh, tightening down some bolts, like locking some things in, and really getting super practical about our approach to whatever it is that we are wanting to work on. And then the moon is going to move into Pisces. And so right after all of that, it's emo season. Okay. So whatever it is that you needed to get done, I hope you get it done by midnight, because that's literally the rest of the time is it's moon in Pisces. Okay. What are our holy days for October 24th? Well, from our Nepalese friends and ancestors, running from October 24th to November 7th, we have the Festival of Dashain. This is one of the most important festivals in Nepal, also celebrated by lots of Hindus. And it is the victory of good over evil. I'm just going to leave it like that, right? It is the victory of the goddess Durga over the demon Mahi Shasara. And the rest of the festival associates the festival with the victory of Rama over Ravana. For Nepalese Buddhists, Dashain symbolizes the adoption of Buddhism, etc., etc. So, kind of a big deal. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Oof. From our Yoruba friends and ancestors, we have the feast of Erinle. In the Yoruba tradition, Erinle is a great hunter who becomes an Orisha. He is a protector. So here is another protector image showing up this week. From our Egyptian friends and ancestors, we have feasts for Hathor and Shu, as well as a day of Renenetet and Neith. No time to get into those, but check out those goddesses if you're curious. From our Greek friends and ancestors, we have the festival of Stenia, and Stenia is held as the pre-funk leading up to another festival, which we're going to talk about in just a few minutes, called Thesmophoria. And this is it is a really rad festival complex. I'll get into it in just a few. Also on this day, from our Druid friends and ancestors, we have feasts for the air spirits. Incenses offered up to the sylphs and other air spirits. Rituals involving dreams or the powers of the mind could be performed. So a great day for doing any of that kind of work, generally speaking. And then from our Gnostic and Catholic friends, this is the feast of the Archangel Raphael, who blows the trumpet. Raphael is associated with healing, and in our biblical and Gnostic imagery, the Archangel Raphael blows the trumpet that stirs the pool of Bethesda where Jesus healed people. This character, this archetype, is depicted in the Judgment card, which some systems connect to the planet Pluto, the modern ruling planet of Scorpio. So there's that for you. That's everything for October 24th. Yes, it is. Is it? Yes, it is. Okay. Moving on to Wednesday, October 25th. We have at 5:20 a.m. our gibbous moon in Pisces at 16 degrees. This moon is opposite Venus at 15 degrees of Virgo. And when we are hanging out with the gibbous moon, our symbol that we work with is the vine. Our systems are beginning to pick up some kind of momentum, or they're getting really big. They might be getting really out of hand, or they might be actually beginning to show some progress as we head towards our goal. So we can see it play out in both ways. What are we doing with a gibbous moon in Pisces? This is a moment of momentum and expansion in our spiritual connectivity. Now, a common word that we work with in Pisces is sacrifice, martyrdom. And I hate that. I mean, I love it, but I also hate it. I hate it right now, especially so. From a very neutral standpoint, this is a moment of we're asking ourselves, where am I being asked to sacrifice? Where is sacrifice getting bigger and bigger? Where is that act of sacrifice getting out of hand? Where is that act of martyrdom getting out of hand? I know. In moon phase astrology, Raven Caldera encourages us to ask ourselves, what are we willing to sacrifice for your own ability to express yourself? And my note to that is, why is that a growing concern right now? Why is that a growing concern in my situation? Why am I being asked to sacrifice anything to simply exist? Why can't I just authentically be myself? What's up with that? And so that situation is getting bigger. That is growing and building in momentum. With the opposition from Venus in Virgo, there could be a lot of distraction around whataboutism. There could be a lot of distraction around, no, I'm going to get lost in the details, and I'm going to lose sight of the bigger picture. There could be opposition in the sense of, let's just keep things diplomatic. Let's smooth things over. Let's sweep this under the rug and move on to the next nice conversation. Again, Venus does not like straightforward, what am I trying to say here? Venus doesn't want that like argument. Venus doesn't want the conflict. Venus just wants things to be lovely and taste good and feel good and be comfortable and look cute. And goddess bless, right? Me too, man. Me too. That's what all of us want. But sometimes we have to have a hard conversation. And this could be a difficult day for having a hard conversation because Venus is like, no, I want you to keep it cute. So your mileage may vary on that one. But take care of yourself at all, at all stages of that. For our lunar body work, working with this gibbous moon in Pisces, we are awakening, activating, adorning, stimulating, and preparing for action. The legs, especially the ankles and the feet. Those are the parts of the body that are ruled by Pisces. And for our plant body work, we are planting roots. Some sources say except potatoes, except we know the potatoes of rebellion can be planted at any and all times. So, if you've got potatoes of rebellion, plant them on this day. Otherwise, planting roots on this day. This is also a good time for watering and irrigating, or, having concern around water systems and people's access to water. Which we're going to get into here in just a second with some of our holy days. Transplanting, grafting annual flowers as well as fruit and veg that bear crops above ground. Planting annuals that yield above ground, like our viney crops, as mentioned before. This is also a good time for taking cuttings and harvesting above ground for drying and storage. No spicy astrology for this day, thank goodness. For a moment, we have a little reprieve. So directly to our holy days, we have from our Egyptian friends and ancestors the Feast of Heka, but from our Hopi friends and ancestors, we have Owalk, which is the third Women's Healing Festival, aka Melons on the Vine. So there's our connection to vine stuff. These are the women's basket dances, and they are prayers for healthy fertility. Women and femmes spend several days in a kiva, fasting and praying and chanting and putting themselves into an altered state to do this work. These groups are matrilineal and matriarchal. And so when these women emerge from the kiva, they chant while presenting baskets to the four directions, lifting them, lowering them. And then they toss the baskets to onlookers. But ultimately, what they are doing is they are asking for the cold, wet rains to come so that the crops will grow in the following spring. So there's this asking for rain, this asking for cold, wet to come on for us. So, in alignment with our moon in Pisces, we have that. And that's going to continue for the next couple of days, the rest of our lunar week. Okay, let's move on to Thursday the 26th. Alrighty, that brings us to Thursday the 26th, where the moon is moving into Aries. And this officially begins the pre-funk for the upcoming Aries full moon / lunar eclipse. So batten down the hatches, kids, because this lunar eclipse window, or excuse me, this eclipse window that we have been traveling through the midst of has been a lot. I expect no less from this upcoming moon. Hopefully it will mellow the fuck out after that, but okay. So our moon is moving into Aries. That's really all I have to say about that. So moving on to the holy days of Thursday, October 26th, we have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Princeps. This is also found in the constellation Boötes, like Izar before. And Princeps is a Latin word meaning prince or prime, prima. Like my little R roll there, prima. Princeps is another marker of our capacity to protect and be protected, but with a good hint of our roles as regents or leaders of some type and the crown that is ours for doing the job well. This information is coming from astrologyking.com, where I get a lot of my information about fixed stars. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And what Astrology King is referring to here is not just the protection of the star Izar that we talked about, but stars from last week that we would have talked about if I could have gotten out of Stunlock, but sorry. Spica and Arcturus. Spica is connected to Virgo. It literally is the ears of grain in Virgo's hand. And Arcturus is also nearby. Found in the constellation of the bear, the great bear. And Spica is like the great treasures, the great harvest, the great gifts from the universe. And Arcturus is like, you better use those right. Arcturus can lend protection to anybody, including people who don't deserve it. But eventually there's a type of accounting with Arcturus. And it's like, if I gave you presents and you didn't pass them out to everybody, I will come for you later. So that's what is being referred to obliquely here. And so we have these other two stars, Izar and Princeps, that kind of roll along with this same idea of, hey, you're being given power. Are you using it correctly? Because if not, I will come to cash that check at some point. And I personally don't wait on the gods to enact justice here on planet Earth. I think that's our responsibility. If somebody needs to be held accountable, it's us to do it. It's up to us to do it. So I'll put that out there too. Okay. What else is happening October 26th? Running from October 26th to November 2nd. From our pagan friends and ancestors, we have Zetisis and Huresis. This is a place where some modern pagans who are very into the Egyptian systems put the Osiris underworld journey stuff. And this is the first day of that. And it runs from October 22nd or 26th through November 2nd. This is not true for all of the different modern groups that are attempting to follow or recreate ancient Egyptian systems of worship. Some folks see this here, but certainly appropriate timing. from one angle, anyways, that this is the time of Osiris's underworld journey, wherein Set, the god of chaos and borders and boundaries, yes, their name is connected to Saturn. Yes, their name is connected to Seth and Satan. Calls the edge of the known and the unknown, the edge of the desert, and then the edge of the oblivion beyond. And Set chops Osiris up into a bunch of pieces, and Isis and Co. have to put him back together again. It's your classic death and rebirth process. No big deal. Also on this day, running from October 26th to the 29th, from our Egyptian friends and ancestors in the past, we have the procession of Nebtu and Khnum. And running from October 26th to the 28th, we have from our Greek friends and ancestors the multi-day festival of Thesmophoria, which I mentioned previously. And some other holidays. I'm not going to talk about those. Let's talk about Thesmophoria. First off, I have a big old piece on my website about this. When you go to the Samhain page, just scroll down, you'll see there's a ton of extra reading at the bottom of that page of pieces that I have written or recorded in the past. Thesmophoria is the bitching festival. Goddess bless. I don't know how we don't have one of these every weekend, but whatever. This is a festival where women and femmes literally abandon the town and are like, good luck, y'all, figure it out. They leave bunches of branches of this plant in their beds that's like an aphrodisiac, meaning like a sex drive reducer. Lovely that we have this during the same week as our Ace Week. Very appropriate. Like, sex, not today, not with me. No, thank you. And they all go out to the fields, they go out to the woods, they build these little temporary shelters, and they party, they eat, they drink, they fart, they burp, and basically they get it out of their system. So if somebody's got something to say, this is the time to have that argument. The elders, the oldest women and femmes that are in the group, keep it cute enough, like, make sure that doesn't specifically come to blows, but wrestling is absolutely encouraged. And it's this very like, whatever funkiness is amongst us, let's work it out. Let us work it out. Now, what is trippy about this, and I'm not going to go too far into this, I'm going to encourage you to go read the piece on my site. The word Thesmophoria connects to one of Demeter's names. There is a Demeter Thesmophoros that is out there. She's not talked about very often. Thesmophoros basically means lawgiver or law holder. And so Demeter, with this extra name, Demeter Thesmophoros, is basically like Demeter, right? AKA planet Earth. And it's the laws of nature. It's literally, her name literally means like the laws of nature, the laws of how it all works. And there is an implication behind this festival and in deeper research behind Demeter Thesmophoros of this idea of these laws being passed down. I wonder if this is connected to the Eleusinian mysteries. It always follows directly after the mysteries, etc., etc. There's a lot more there about sexual healing, and sexual and sensual healing after loss, amongst some people and not with other people. Lots of stuff. Go check out the piece on my site. It's a very cool, funny, but also trippy festival. All right. What else is happening on this day? Feasts for Khonsu and Seshat and Sekhat, from our Egyptian friends and ancestors, from our Bulgarian friends and ancestors. This is the Day of the Ancients, honoring the old gods. On the global level, this is the Intersex Awareness Day from around the planet. Our intersex, transgender, non-binary friends and lovers and community members. And also on this day, 1982, our great sister witch Sybil Leek passed on. Certainly a holy day for pagans around the planet. Okay, moving into the last day of our lunar week, um, Friday the 27th. We have no astrology of note this day except that our full moon in Taurus slash uh, lunar eclipse is going to be on this day. So, as I said, when the moon entered Aries, we are officially in the pre-funk of this eclipse, and this will be our last eclipse in Taurus for a while. I do believe. I do believe we are all done with it. We'll talk more about it next week, but just note that with the eclipses, with the Plutonian energy, just the whole week, even in the calm moments, may feel like there's like this rumbling underground, like there's this trembling or a tremor of some kind. And do whatever you got to do to stay grounded, to keep yourself together. You know, deep breathing, do your 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 check-ins, all that good stuff. This is certainly the time period to be utilizing our coping techniques as we move through this tremendous work. So, as I said, no other astrology of note other than preparing ourselves for the next eclipse. So, moving directly to the holy days of October 27th, we have the heliacal rising of the fixed star Sirma. And Sirma is found in the constellation of Virgo. It is found in the train of Virgo. So, this is one of the very last stars that we're going to pass through that's connected to the constellation of Virgo. And ultimately, the fixed star Sirma, this is again directly from the Astrology King website, fixed star Sirma or Surma by its Greek title, or Al Ghafar by its name in Arabic. The significance of this star and title lies firstly in the heavy personal responsibility, which is implicit in the occult questing and acquisition of spiritual power, seen in Kambalia, which is a fixed star that's going to rise in the next couple of days. And secondly, in the Islamic concept of istighfar, which is the act of seeking forgiveness from Allah. I'm seeking forgiveness for my pronunciation of that word. So sorry. It means to cover, to protect, and to suppress. The longer word is a recognition that the greater our attainment of spiritual power, or indeed any power at all, since it is given to us by God, then the more serious our lapses in error and sin to which we remain prone, no matter what power, even the most spiritual, we attain. Some would rephrase this to say, especially the most spiritual. And so this is, again, following up with what I was saying before, which was, these stars represent these patterns that we're in of a type of accounting that's like, hey, so I gave you some cool stuff. You were supposed to pass that out. I gave you some cool things. You were supposed to use that to the benefit of everybody. Did you? There is always that type of accounting that comes back from the universe. If nothing else, and I talk about this a lot in the Mabon classes and in the Samhain classes, if there are devils to be met on the underworld journey, they surely will come from your own heart. What do I mean by that? I mean stuff like this. If you know that you've been given privilege and you don't use it at the times when the world is calling for it, you will carry that knowledge. You will be burdened by that knowledge. That is the devil that will come for you. No big deal. Sorry if I got super heavy all of a sudden. And I want you to keep this in context. This is going back to what I said at the beginning of the podcast. This is not a time for us to be flogging ourselves with the horrors of what is happening around the world. We have to hold this. Okay? We have to hold that we have some responsibility and be very clear at how much power we have and how much we don't have. What do I have power to do? Call my political representatives, boycott, buying goods or utilizing services from regions of the world, etc., etc. Right? Like there are things that are within my power. Can I go to another country and speak to the head of that country and tell them you can't do this? No, Megan Angus, probably will not get that opportunity in this lifetime. But I can contact my representatives. I can put pressure on my politicians. I can choose where I'm spending my money. I can choose which platforms get my clicks. I can, you know what I mean? That stuff, right? That's that thing that these types of fixed stars, the information that we are associating with these fixed stars, that's what it's talking about. Where can you do something and what can you do? Did you do it? There's a meme on the internet that's like, if you've ever wondered what you would have done in those times, these times are now. This is you doing this. Like, this is what you would be doing. So, you know, figure it out, kid. The other thing I will say about this particular fixed star, which I tend to not get too hardcore into these portions of the information that can come with fixed stars, but it's this. Also same page, Astrology King. This constellation, Virgo, but in particular this fixed star, indicative of abundance in harvest, fruitfulness of agriculture in general, etc., etc. But when prominent in the charts of eclipses, it portends events concerning heads of state, and in this regard can be an ill omen indeed. So, I'm just saying, if you've been out there with your entire ass out for the world being a fascist, I don't know, maybe some wild stuff's gonna happen. Just saying. Just saying. Just saying. Not saying. I'm just saying. You know. Okay. Also on this day, running from October 27th to November 3rd, from our Slavic friends and ancestors, we have Mokosh's festival. Mokosh is a Slavic goddess mentioned in the primary chronicle for Slavs. She is a protector of women's work and women's destiny. She watches over spinning and weaving, the shearing of sheep. She protects women during childbirth. Mokosh is a mother goddess, or the mother goddess. And Mokosh is one of our goddesses that we witness change shape and change form throughout the year. She is a maiden in spring and summer. She becomes the mother goddess in summer and fall, and then she moves into a crone aspect in winter. Mokosh is deeply connected to the ideas of moisture, rain, and bogs. Her name literally probably means moisture. Her name is derived from the same root in Slavic as words like mokri, which means wet, and moknut or moknati, which means get wet or to dive deeply into something. And so we have multiple festivals now at this time of the week. Once our moon moved into Pisces, right? That was our last big phase with the gibbous moon in Pisces. We've had multiple festivals now that are about water, like the Archangel Raphael blowing the trumpet and disturbing the healing waters. The Owalkt Melon Festival from our Hopi friends and ancestors, where they're calling in the cold, wet rains. And now this. And she is a big deal. Mokosh is still super popular as a powerful, life-giving force and protector of women. Villages are named after her. Eastern Europe is still all about her. In fact, as late as the 19th century, she was worshipped as a force of fertility and the ruler of death. Again, very appropriate here in this season, right? We're calling in the cold, wet rains. And these cold, wet rains that come in during fall for us in the Northern Hemisphere, They do a bunch of things, right? They definitively end the harvest season. Um, those rains are going to saturate the ground and hopefully offer fertility in the spring, but they also help break down the end of this year's growth cycle. Right, like think of the rest of the crops, or the remnants of the crops that have been being harvested over the last several months. And now these rains come in and just drench the fields, right? And they break down all of that material matter. Again, think about those words that we connect with Scorpio: composting, um, death and rebirth. And these cold, wet rains do that work for us. They do exactly that work for us. They come in and they're cold and they're wet. It's difficult, right? It's not exactly comfortable, but it's necessary. And they come in and they go, these old systems are done. Let me break them down and turn them into mush and cover them in mold and mildew and fungus, and let those systems break these systems down, etc., etc. Perhaps some cold, wet rains for a variety of different systems on the planet would be appropriate. Okay. Also on this day, running from October 22nd to October 27th to November 3rd, we have the Fees of Terra in Ireland. October 27th to the 31st, Horus welcomes the Nile from our Egyptian friends and ancestors. And this is another water festival that we're talking about here. It connects back to an ancient ritual where a king would go forth to the Nile's banks to record the height of the annual inundation. So the Nile has crested, right? We've been talking about this for a few months, started back in July. The Nile floods its banks and continues to flood the ancient delta and farmlands of ancient Egypt. And then at some point it will hit its high water mark, and then it begins to come back down again. And so this would be around that time. And so these kings, or Horus, would go out and measure. Now, there would be happiness or not so much happiness depending on how much water came through. How intense was the inundation? Because that's going to tell us how much we're going to grow next year. So we've got these systems from our Greek friends, our Hopi friends, our Egyptian friends, our Slavic friends. Like, there's a lot of different systems looking at this type of stuff at this time of year. Also happening at this time from our Egyptian friends and ancestors, the jubilation of Isis and Nephthys. And this is, celebrating the Osiris process, feasts for Hathor as well. And from our Roman friends and ancestors, we have the Epulum Iovi, which is dedicated to Jove or Jupiter, and the Dies Natalis of the temples for Feronia and Fortuna Primigenia. Fortune favors the bold is literally Fortune Primigenia, like the fortune of the beginning, the fortune of the first ones. And Feronia was a goddess associated with wildlife, fertility, health, abundance, etc., etc. She also granted freedom to slaves or civil rights to the most humble parts of society. So perhaps she could step in here a little bit, and her and Fortuna could help out some folks. That would be super sick. Super dope, ladies. Super dope. Okay. That brings us to the end of our witchy week. So to go back over to the astrology very, very quickly, again, reminding you that we've got lots of Plutonian stuff hanging out in the background, whether there are direct aspects to Pluto or not this week. So know that there is that rumbling underground, that intensity that can move into paranoia and fear. Ground yourself where you need to. Saturday the 21st, we have our waxing half moon at 28 degrees of Capricorn. We have the sun in Libra square Pluto in Capricorn at 27 degrees. We have Venus in Virgo trine Jupiter retrograde in Taurus at 12 degrees. And we also have Mercury stepping into Scorpio, and then the moon moving into Aquarius. On Sunday the 22nd, we have Mercury in Virgo trine Saturn retrograde in Pisces at 0 degrees. Monday, the 23rd, we have the sun moving into Scorpio. And uh, Tuesday, the 24th, we have the sun in Scorpio, trine Saturn retrograde in Pisces at 0 degrees, and the moon stepping into Pisces. Wednesday, the 25th, we have our gibbous moon at 16 degrees of Pisces. Thursday, the 26th, we have the moon moving into Aries. And Friday, the 27th, nothing at all except preparing ourselves for this upcoming full moon in Taurus, eclipse, etc., etc., etc. Here is where I would be giving you tarot and witchcraft work to do and journaling prompts. I'm not going to give you any of that this week. I want you to take care of yourself. I want you to reach out to your community members and offer them support if you can. In whatever ways you can, I want you to educate yourself on the conflicts that are happening around the world. I'm biased. I say that all the time. I know I've waited until the end of the podcast to say it this time, but I think I say it pretty frequently. I'm biased. I also get stuff wrong. I'm not infallible. Double check me. Reference my references. Come up with your own conclusions. But I am inclined to see the situation between Palestine and Israel, for example, in a similar lens as how I think of indigenous people here in America versus the colonizers that came over. It's not identical to that. It's not the same. But I see it in that David versus Goliath kind of a lens. I'm also not here for arguing about it. So there's that, right? I'm not here to argue about it. I have some capacity for conversation, but I have my opinions, and I have my beliefs about how things should be in the world. I believe in a free Palestine. I do not, and I never will support fascism, and I don't care what flag flies that fascism chooses to hide behind. That said, I will absolutely in no way, shape, or form tolerate anything anti Semitic. But Semitic is a large group of people, not just Jewish folks. But also, I am zero tolerance when it comes to anti Jewish statements. But Israel is not all Jewish people, and not all Jewish people come from Israel. Those are not the same things. Okay. So, for our tarot, if you want to work with something, you can step into our Scorpio tarot cards, which are the Death card, that's Scorpio, the Judgment card, that's Pluto, or the Tower card, that's Mars, the ancient ruler of Scorpio. I have big, long written pieces on my website about all three of those cards, as well as the Fool card. I think of the Judgment card, Tower, and Fool as the posse of the Death card. I also have some recorded tarot circles for patrons on the Tower card, the Death card, and the Judgment card. No, not the Fool. But I also encourage you to think about, what are you doing with your magical practice, right? This is the question that the fixed star Sirma is sort of charging us with, and Princeps and all of these stars that we're working with this week. They're like, hey, all that navel gazing is super dope. What are you doing with it? So this week, if you are doing magical study, I challenge you to also ask yourself, to what end? Is it only for your edification, which is lovely? Or is this something that you're hoping can help you move through the world? Awesome. Can help other people move through the world? Also awesome. For our witchcraft this week, take care of each other. Take care of yourself. Reach out to your people, call them, check on them, make sure people are okay. Are there Muslims in your community? Check on them. Are there Jews in your community? Check on them. Make sure they're okay. Make sure that they are feeling seen, feeling held. There's plenty of judgment in this world. We don't need to add to that. For our journaling prompts this week, write your politicians, write an email, write a text to your representatives and tell them this has to stop and that you don't support it and that you absolutely do not support your taxes being sent overseas to further the oppression of marginalized people anywhere, including this latest conflict. That's your work this week, which is this is what it is to be magical people, in my opinion. It's to face the storm and to see that gnarliness. End of Mabon season, people. This is our harvest. These are the seeds that we've sown or that somebody sowed in the past, and now we get to harvest this. How do you feel about what's in your basket right now? How do you feel about what is coming up from the ground? How do you feel about the results? This is what it is to work the wheel sometimes too. I love you. We've got this. Blessed be.